Hi, my name's Keith Johnson, and I have had myself an amazing experience over the last few weeks that we've tried to share through video on the A Root Awakening YouTube channel. What we've tried to do is to give you a chance to come with me as I just got back from Saudi Arabia, and we did 3 videos. The first one was climbing the mountain of God. It's about 10 minutes. The second one was sneaking into the altar of the golden calf. The third one, which we just completed last night, the 31st of December, is hiking the Split Rock. In all of those experiences, I thought about this place. I am at the A Root Awakening headquarters, where every time I walk by this room, I'm just amazed. Michael has done just an amazing job of creating the Mishkan, where you've got the altar and you've got the menorah, and more than that, the most important thing for me is you got this Torah scroll. And as I've walked back and forth, we've been doing a number of tapings here, the Why Not Jesus series. We've done a number of things. I keep walking by this Torah scroll thinking, what would it be like if we could teach you to learn what's in this Torah scroll? Now, here's the situation. To the left, we have the stone tablets, or a replica of the stone tablets, written by the finger of God in a different font than we have here. This is kind of like a Paleo-Hebrew, or way, ancient Hebrew, think of it that way. These stone tablets, as of today, are in the Ark of the Covenant, wherever the Ark of the Covenant is. This is a replica of it. Over here, from those stone tablets, we have a Torah scroll. Thousands and thousands of Torah scrolls around the world. All of them have this section. So I came here yesterday and I unrolled to this section. And what is the section that I have here? It is the section of what we call the 10 matters. These are the 10 things, some people call them commandments. These are the things that we like to say that are still important for us today. So after my experience at Saudi Arabia, I took you with me. You climbed the mountain, you went to the altar, we went to the Split Rock. What would it be like if you could learn to read these 10 words, these 10 matters, these 10 things in their original language, history, and context today? What would it be like if you could teach them to your children? So what we're going to do for the next 10 weeks, say 10 weeks, at 1 o'clock on Sundays, we're going to have a 10-episode series where you learn what these words mean, how you can apply them, even how you can memorize them in the original language. So join us at the Root Awakening channel. 10 matters that still matter to God. For those who don't know, I used to serve as chaplain for the Minnesota Vikings professional football team, and we had the loudest stadium in the NFL with one of the wildest introductions of the team you can imagine. There was smoke, blasts of what sounded like a shofar, cannon shooting, and fans shouting. Then you would hear this loud voice saying, "And now, your Minnesota Vikings!" They would then run out of an inflated ship behind a guy dressed up like a Viking riding a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. Oh, and sometimes I would run out with them. And yet it cannot compare with what happened at an outdoor stadium of sorts called Mount Sinai. The introduction that took place there changed the course of history, and what was said has been etched in stone and in the future will be etched on the hearts of God's people. My name is Keith Johnson of Biblical Foundations Academy International. Our mission is to inspire people around the world to build a biblical foundation for their faith. Welcome to Scripture Bites. Well, this is my virtual library where I'll be able to give you a glimpse of my approach to studying Scripture using all of my available tools. Let's start by launching our Scripture Bites interface.
Loading interface. Uploading scripture.
I'm uploading our control verse to the SPI that will help us expedite the process of discovery, so you'll be able to understand the Scripture Bite for yourself and apply it into your life. Before we jump into this Scripture Bite series, that's right, folks, this is going to be a 10-part series on what is traditionally called the 10 Commandments. However, we have 2 really important issues we need to resolve before we get into the meat of the matter. The first issue is the title of the series that would be expected to be called the 10 Commandments. I have to confess, they are actually not called the 10 Commandments in the original language of Scripture. Before I give you the original name, let's take a stroll through the Scriptures to see what we find that will help me create a good title for us. There are 3 times the words 10 Commandments are found in the King James Version translation. And he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. He did neither eat bread nor drink water. And he wrote upon the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. Second verse. And he declared unto you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, even 10 commandments. And he wrote them upon 2 tablets of stone. Third verse, and he wrote on the tables, according to the first writing, the 10 commandments, which the Lord spake unto you in the mount, out of the midst of the fire in the day of the assembly. And the Lord gave them unto me. Let's do our due diligence and take a quick peek to see what words are being translated into the phrase 10 commandments. Behind all three references, we find the Hebrew words aseret ha-devarim, which mean 10 words, 10 matters, or 10 things in English. As a historical point of reference, early English Bibles like the Coverdale and Tyndale versions used the phrase 10 verses as the translation of aseret ha-devarim. The Geneva Bible started calling the 10 words or matters the 10 commandments, and now most, if not all, English translations have followed suit, including the Jewish Publication Society. This in spite of the rabbinic tradition of referring to the 10 words or matters as aseret ha-divrot, the 10 words. We don't have to search far and wide to see where the phrase 10 words comes from. In the opening of the revelation on Mount Sinai, we see these words. And God spake all these words, saying, Exodus 21, King James Version. The Hebrew word behind words is, drum roll please, while we open the scroll. Vayidaber Elohim et kol ha-devarim ha'ele le'amor. The first and fifth Hebrew words are both based on the same root word davar, which means word, thing, or matter. So what has become the 10 commandments in English Bibles is actually referred to in the scroll as the 10 words, matters, or things. The first word in the verse sets the stage for the phrase by using davar in the piel vav consecutive third masculine singular form, meaning and he spoke. The noun word davar has been intensified, transforming it into a verb, meaning to speak. Notice that it is God or Elohim in the verse who is the third masculine singular subject of the action. This will be important grammatical information as we progress. So with this important background information in mind, here's the full title of the series, 10 Matters That Still Matter to God. The second issue is a bit more complicated, but not impossible to address. We need to know where to start and how to divide these 10 important matters, words, things, or for translation traditionalists, commandments. Jewish, Catholic, and Protestant traditions collide when it comes to dividing this passage into 10 separate sections or commandments. According to the traditional Catholic reading, the first commandment is, I, the Lord, am your God. You shall not have other gods besides me. The traditional Protestant reading of the first commandment is, you shall have no other gods but me. It is actually worth slowing down to understand the traditional Jewish division for the first commandment and their rationale for reading it a certain way. There are actually two possible ways to read the entire passage based on a very obscure but hugely significant set of symbols called Masoretic accents that are found in the Hebrew text. CB, upload the Masoretic accents for review.
Masoretic accents not available.
CB, please don't tell me that while I'm in the middle of presenting this scripture bite.
This version of the SBI does not support Masoretic accents. Please upgrade to version 2.
Okay, here's the situation, folks. There are 4 important things I interact with when studying the Hebrew Bible: consonants, vowels, accents, and Masoretic notes. It seems that this version of our SBI is limited to Hebrew consonants and vowels. We haven't gotten to the Masoretic notes yet. The accents serve as musical notes for the cantors who sing the Torah and for the grammatical division of verses. For example, is there a comma, semicolon, period, etc.? The short answer to why Jewish tradition has 2 reading approaches is that there are 2 sets of accents found in this passage and in its parallel in Deuteronomy chapter 5 that provide guidance for the public versus private reading of the section. So our control verse has 2 possible endings. Unfortunately, our version of the SBI is not capable of showing you the Masoretic accents.
This version of the SBI does not support
Suffice it to say, we're going to use the Jewish traditional public reading for this series because it takes into account the Masoretic double accentuation issue. Okay, I confess. It also allows for a nice and clear 10 series scripture bites presentation. Our first of 10 control verses comes from the King James Version. I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. As you can see, the KJV uses the word which rather than the expected who that is peculiar, especially since they make it a point to use all capital letters for the title Lord, which they substitute for the personal Hebrew name of God. Before we open the scroll source, let's add a little context in order to understand this verse and the entire passage. Let's close our eyes and imagine this scene. reverse that. We better keep our eyes open if we want to understand the context of what is the first of 10 words, matters, or things that God spoke to his people. We will look at 2 important verses for context that will give us a glimpse of the sights and sounds of that magnificent mountain on that amazing day. And it came to pass on the 3rd day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God. And they stood at the nether part of the mount, Exodus 19, 16, and 17 in the King James Version. With this backdrop, let's take a look at the first 3 words of the scroll source that shows us the words spoken by the voice of God from heaven. Anochi Yehovah Eloheka. The first 3 famous and fantastic words from the creator of the universe are crucial to understanding not only our scripture bite verse, but the entire passage. In fact, we find the exact phrase, I am the Lord your God, 40 times in the English Bible. However, if we take a closer look in the Hebrew scriptures, we find something worth mentioning. At Mount Sinai, God introduced himself to the multitude in a very specific way. Anochi Yehovah Eloheka. The form for I am is Anochi and is sometimes used in a rhythmic and rhetorical style rather than the less formal Ani, which also means I am. Anochi is used 359 times in the Hebrew scriptures, whereas Ani is used 881 times. In my presentation, Countdown to Reconnection, I give some important information about the journey to the mountain and the significance of the first 3 amazing words that introduce the one who is speaking, Anochi Yehovah Eloheka. However, I didn't have a chance to discuss the next 6 words that are really foundational if we want to understand the context of the 10 words, things, matters, or commandments. The phrase out of the land of Egypt is found 39 times in the Hebrew scriptures, and from the house of bondage is found 13 times. It is a point of reference, revelation, and a reminder of how the God of Israel deals with his people. It also made the connection for the people at the mountain that the God who was speaking to them was the same God who had delivered them through miracles before their eyes.
Grammar alert.
This is why I find it worth mentioning that in this verse, we find singular pronouns being used twice instead of the plural form. Anochi Yehovah Eloheka, asher hotzitecha me'eretz Mitzrayim mebait avadim. Your God and brought you out are both singular pronouns rather than the expected plural. It makes the message personal, though it could be argued that these are what are called collective singulars that refer to the nation as a whole. Finally, this statement of fact is seen in Jewish tradition as a positive first commandment that must be acknowledged and acted upon, just like the following 9 words, things, matters, or commandments. So let's get started with the next scripture bite that will help us understand and apply these important words from God in our lives. Since we're only going to study in depth the core phrases that make up the 10 words, matters, things, or commandments, let's commit to memory the first 3 words of this first positive statement. In Hebrew, I realize that there are many people who may have different pronunciation traditions or prohibitions for the second word. Please allow me to share the way I pronounce God's name based on what I've studied in Hebrew manuscript sources. Anochi Yehovah Eloheka. Now it's your turn to hide these 3 Hebrew words in your heart, 1 word at a time. Anochi Yehovah Eloheka. Oh, I almost forgot. For some important background about that great and awesome day at Mount Sinai, visit the homepage at bfainternational.com, go behind the Torah door and take a look at my presentation, Countdown to Reconnection. Then you will be ready to watch the next scripture bite in this series on 10 matters that still matter to God. Until next time, keep reading and watching.
This is your SBI assistant. Did you enjoy this scripture bite? If so, share it with your friends. Be sure to become a free member at bfainternational.com to download a PDF companion study guide for this edition of Scripture Bites. Visit bfainternational.com today to join the conversation.